I'm Brandon Oswald. Today we're going to be doing some leathercraft. The last time you saw us do leathercraft, we made a costrel, a nice, rugged, take out in the woods sort of piece that anybody could have made. We're going to talk about more of the customization, the artwork of leather today. And not just the folk art that you see a lot of in those period pieces, the farmers, they put their own personal touch to it. Today we are going to do a more elaborate, more tradesman-oriented, classic design. A good living could be made out of customizing leather pieces in the cities. You could be a tradesman and this is all you did. And the leather items that were customized and personalized, they were done on a custom order basis. It was something special that somebody had ordered for them, not something that they made on their own. Lower class people of the time period probably weren't having these types of pieces made for them, custom. They would have done their own little sort of folk art to it. These pieces were custom made by people with a little more money, a little higher class. Today, we are going to make a leather wallet. But first, before we assemble it, we are going to add a little carving to it. So we're going to put this into the wallet. A fancy wallet was the same as your dress. You know, the outward appearance, the fancier it was, it really drove home where you were in that whole class structure. You know, if you were a really well-to-do person, you weren't going to have, you know, simple things. You were going to embellish it. And most likely, you were going to pay a specific tradesman to do that embellishment for you. So the first thing we need to do is get out our leather, our veg tan. So the tools we're going to use to cut this out, real simple. Just a straight knife and a punch. And the punch is just to mark where the holes for the stitching are going to be eventually. So we'll just start and we'll just lightly score on the top and trace it out. You're not cutting all the way through on this first pass. So today we're using a veg tan leather, which means it is tanned or preserved with a vegetable matter, and this is oak tan. So oak was one of the most popular 18th century tanning methods. For one, it was so easy to come by the materials. It was just oak bark. And it was also so versatile. Okay. Now we've traced around with the knife, and then we've come through our marking holes with the punch just to mark where they are going to be. So those are going to be our starting stitches for when we actually stitch the wallet together. Now that we have it traced out, now we have to fully cut it out. And we'll need the cutting board for that. And that one, you can cut right all the way through it and we'll get our piece out. This is about a 3-ounce veg tan leather. So it's not too hard to cut all the way through. This little straight knife makes it pretty easy. If it was a real thick leather, we might want to use a round knife, but this knife is working beautifully. The design that we have, I have already drawn it out on paper that's cut out for the same shape as the wallet so we can line it up and get the placement just right. But before we can transfer it to the leather, we have to wet the leather so it'll take the transfer and we can actually see the lines come through. To do that, first we just use water. This whole process is just plain old water. So first, we'll wet the area that is going to be carved. And just enough so that it discolors the leather a little bit. As it dries, it'll go back to the same color. And we actually want to let it dry just a little bit. We don't want it to be wet when we put the paper onto it. Now we'll just line this up. You can see how it's the same shape. And we'll line that up. Now the key is to not let this move too much as you're transferring it. Now we're going to take a little tool called a modeling tool, and it just has a little angle on it and it's not sharp. The key is you want it to be kind of dull so it doesn't cut all the way through the paper. Now we'll just go through, and just like tracing, we'll go through all the lines. Just real carefully and making sure that you don't let it move. And we can lift up here and show you how it's starting to transfer our lines onto it. It's tedious, but this will transfer our design from the paper to the leather. We have our design transferred to the leather, and we didn't cut through all the way on the first time because you don't want the pattern to fall apart. If it cuts through, then you'll have all these little shreds and it'll move and you won't come out with the same exact design. And we want to keep the integrity of the design. We want to keep it all together. If you used a knife, or if your modeling tool was sharp and it actually cut through the paper, it would just move all over the place and you just have shreds of paper that you were trying to get an exact design out of, and that's not good. So we'll keep the paper together, and you can even, as you see, it embossed it, we can still use this again for another one. So it's like a replication sort of process. Now that we have it transferred, the next step is to lightly cut on all the lines that we just transferred. Now, you don't want to cut all the way through. We're just scoring the surface of the leather just to give space and definition and to help us do the actual carving. So we'll take our knife here, and it's just a short knife, something that we can hold and then also rotate in our hands. We want to be able to rotate it so we can follow the curves as smoothly as possible. The next step is to re-wet it to get the moisture level just right, and then we can start by tooling it. We'll open up the cuts with the modeler that we used before, and then we'll use a background tool. It'll give just a little bit of texture to really make the design pop out from the leather, give it kind of a three-dimensional look. Now we'll let that dry till it gets white again, and then we can start tooling. Okay, here we have our finished carving. This was based off of 18th century acanthus leaves. It was really popular back then, and nice scrolls. And now we'll punch our holes and stitch it together. Okay, we have the main body of the wallet stitched together. So you can see it's now taken its form. And this will flap over and tuck through here, but we need this piece stitched on there. So that's what we have here, and this will stitch on like this. And we could add like a monogram or something to that to add a little more personalization to this wallet. I love how this wallet turned out. Love the texture to it. Real good piece. Easy thing to do with very few tools. I just used a knife and a couple background punches, and of course a little bit of imagination to come up with the original design here for our carving. I have my own show on our platform Townsends Plus. It's called My First Trade. There we do all kinds of leather projects that you can follow along for yourself. Click the link in the description and we'll see you next time.